All right, we're going to move on to the next section of chapter 20, which is the later Ming and the early Qing empires. Just to do a review of the Ming accomplishments, we have the voyages conducted by Zheng He. They had they overtook the Mongolians that had taken them. They used explosives to help them overthrow the Mongolians. They had advancements in literature. They were the creators of the early novel, porcelain, painting, just to name a few of them. The Ming Empire is going to last from about 1500, well, looking at it from 1500 to 1644. The Ming took over after the Yin, and they sponsored Zheng He's voyages, but they quickly run into some problems. The Little Ice Age may have caused a lot of stress on the Ming Empire. This caused stress on their agriculture, which in turn is going to hurt the government, and it's going to cause a population decline in China in the 1700s. The flow of New World silver coming into China is going to cause inflation and some other problems. There were bad work conditions. There's a story in the book about a ceramic factory, Jing, and so this is going to show that there were some economic problems. Economic depression is going to come into China, and low population growth. So the Ming do collapse. The next section of the book, Ming Collapse and the Rise of the Qing. The primary cause of the Ming collapse was internal problems that they were having. There was an internal rebellion, and a group of people, the Manchurians, the Manchu, were wanting to rise to power. And this is located, as you can see on the map here, in the northeastern part of China. These rebel forces, led by Li Zicheng, overthrew the Ming in the year 1644 CE. And the Manchu Qing claimed Beijing for their own, and they restored order to China. The Qing were led by a Manchurian imperial family, but the Manchurians were the minority. So you have a minority group leading a majority people. So they're going to have to depend on the diversity that exists in China, these other individuals, to act as their officials. There were few limits on Chinese promotion within imperial bureaucracy, so you can kind of just promote whomever you want. Let's look now at trading companies and missionaries. The Europeans are trading with China, but this trade is slow in the 16th century. Spain and Portugal had trade contacts with Taiwan, but they lost that when the Qing first claimed Taiwan for its own. China claimed Taiwan in the year 1662. By the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company is in the area in Asia, and they're trading. They found favor with the Chinese by Kowtowing, and basically what this is bowing down to show your submission to the Emperor of China. And so the Europeans did this when they got there, and so they were the first Europeans who wanted to trade with the Chinese. They humbled themselves, I guess you could say, in order to gain these trade contacts. And so the Europeans were in awe of of what the Chinese had, the Manchurian power, the manufacturing that existed, and their vast population that existed in China at this time. I have three other important things that we need to note about economy. The joint stock trade companies promoted most of the trade with Asia, and so this isn't European countries necessarily going and seeking these trade contacts. These are private companies that are seeking these trade contacts from Europe. The second thing to note, even though the Europeans had weapons, they never tried a mass invasion of China due to the vast population that the Chinese had. And the Chinese mainly traded porcelain, silk, and spices. So you need to know those three things. The Catholic Jesuits had good success in converting the Qing elite, way more success than they had in Japan. One individual that was very successful, Matteo Ricci, and if we have time in class, we'll take a look at a primary source from Matteo Ricci. So as time goes on, new emperors come into the Qing Empire. And so two emperors we're going to look at are Emperor Kangxi and Qinlong. These are emperors during the 17th and the 18th century. Again, hopefully you have your book open and you're following along so you can see these names and the correct spelling and things like that. These two emperors repaired roads. They repaired the waterworks in China. Remember, the Grand Canal had fallen in disrepair. They're going to cut rent for people, so that's going to help out the economy a little. They're encouraging foreign trade. And so the early Qing repaired a lot of the things that were, quote unquote, broken with China. Vietnam, Nepal, and Burma are going to send ambassadors to the Qing court, so you can see that the Qing are growing and thriving. Emperor Kangxi, this gentleman here took over at the age of 16. He incorporated a lot of outside thinking, a lot of outside ideas, like European map making, pharmaceuticals. He was even accepting of the Christians coming into his country. However, he was not in favor of giving up the ancestor worship that took place in China. So the Jesuits, who weren't tolerant of this Chinese ancestry worship, got kicked out. And so some Jesuits were okay with it. Rome was never okay with it. Rome, which is the center of the Catholic Church, always said it was wrong. So some Jesuits kind of ignored it and they were willing to go along with it. Jesuits that weren't willing to ignore it were asked to leave China. And they ultimately were expelled. China does have an influence on Europe. It's not just Europe having an influence of China. This is not one-way trade. The Chinese taught the Europeans about vaccinations. The popular Chinese trade goods became popular in Europe. Things like silk, porcelain, tea, jewelry, specifically jade, wallpaper. They also got from the Qing poetry, inoculations. I think I said vaccinations already. Europeans like Voltaire were very impressed with these Chinese emperors and the power that they had. The Chinese trade goods were very popular, but the trade contacts were somewhat limited. There was a system called the Canton system, where Canton was the only port open to European trade. The Europeans are going to try to get more of this open, and this is going to show us the Macartney mission in 1793 to try to gain more trade contacts in China. However, it was unsuccessful. The next section of the book, Population and Social Stress. From 1500 to 1800, China's population tripled. This is going to cause a greater demand in food, and they're going to clear out more farmland. This is going to lead to deforestation in China, which is going to cause more flooding. And the dams and the dikes were not maintained in China. The Grand Canal becomes unusable. They can't use the Grand Canal in the late 18th century. The Qing land was twice as large as the Ming, but they used the same number of governmental officials. By 1790s, the Qing are in a lot of trouble. So that's it for the section on the Ming and the Qing from chapter 20. In the next video, we'll take a look at Russia.